Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, rising from the blaze, the eyes on me to burn again. Let me dance in the rhythm of your flame. If I burn, let me die to burn again. If I burn, let me die to burn again.
Hello, everyone. We are so happy to arrive with you at Conscious Consumer Network.tv. And this is the Herbal Knowledge Keepers show, and it's the in-between show for Get Lit. And today we've got Dakota Granny Woman and myself, who started Deerwomon. And again, this program is, we are always going to be utilizing the Herbal Database, which has over 15,000 entries of a cross-referencing database on herbs. And the knowledge and wisdom that Dakota has invested into this program is well over 10 years of her time and energy, and it's brilliant. And so each show we are going to pull up the Herbal Database, and we're going to continue to demonstrate on the topic that we bring to you each session so that you can get more and more familiar with it. And we hope that you're encouraged to go to the online site and register and download the Herbal Database for your own personal and professional use. And today, a very important topic, and we hear about it often amongst our family and friends and in the world right now, is the issue of Alzheimer's and dementia. And what was the other part, Dakota? Herbal?
We're going to also, if we get to it, cover herbal actions and properties in the database.
Okay, good, good. And so we hope you join us in the chat room if you need to, or you can call. You'll see the phone number occasionally up on the broadcast window, but really don't hesitate. And when you come into the chat room, there's no expectation of you, but it's a good place that you can ask a question and we'll address it immediately in the show. All right? And I think that's good for the introduction. And just a reminder, every other week we do the Herbal Knowledge Keepers, and the in-between week is Get Lit with Rebecca Hahn and myself. So today, Dakota, if you want to go ahead and start us up here.
Okay. So in the first episode, we demonstrated how to use the Herbal Database. And we'll continue to give pointers, but we're going to start digging into it a little bit more today. I have a number of friends who are struggling with various forms of dementia, and I promised them that I would do a show on dementia, which includes Alzheimer's. So that's what we're going to do. There's hope. It's actually a pretty interesting time for getting to the bottom of this and finding out ways that we can help people regardless of what stage they're at. So I'm going to share my screen and take you to the database itself. Let me just do that here real quickly. And I think, nope, that's the wrong place. I can't see my, here we go. All right, so this is what it looks like to you when you sign up for it. This is your opening screen. And just a quick review, this is the information panel down here. The upward arrow raises it, and the downward arrow lowers it. The quickest way to find what you're looking for is to use the search box. Now, I've enlarged, for the show, I've enlarged the size of the heading so that you hopefully can see it on the video. And if you don't see it real well, I can enlarge them again. It just means that you're not going to see as much on the screen.
Dakota, I am seeing it very well. I'm looking at the YouTube version.
Okay, great.
It's coming across good.
Okay. And so we're going to go ahead and go directly to the section on dementia. The quickest way is to use the search box. So as you see, I'm starting to type in dementia. And we've got a number of different areas we could look at, but we'll start with the top level. That's going to be just main heading here. And now what you're looking at is it's kind of a pattern language. It shows associations. So the heading in the middle, dementia, is our main heading. So the information screen is going to have all kinds of information related strictly to dementia itself. And below it, don't worry, we're going to dig into this some, but I just want to give you a little view of what we're looking at here. So below the main heading, these are generally going to be different substances that can help treat dementia. If they're purple, that means it's some type of a phytochemical that's, a chemical that's from a plant. If it's this kind of an orangey color, that's going to be an essential oil. And the green color relates to what I'm calling therapeutics, and that could be a condition or a treatment or something like that. And then over on the left, these are also associated with dementia, and they're a little bit more of a loose association. We'll get into that a little bit too. And at the top is a higher order level than dementia itself. So here under this heading, we've got brain health and disorders, and if we click on that, we come up with anything that could go wrong with the brain, or conversely, how to take care of it. And then over here, another category for neurological disorders, and that takes us through a whole other pathway. So at the bottom, there's a bar that I can scroll. Whenever there's too much material to show on the screen, a little scroll bar is going to pop up. And so here we have a number of different sections. So what I would like to do is just to start with talking a little bit about dementia and the different types of dementia that are out there. Alzheimer's isn't the only one. However, it's the most common, and so we're going to focus most of this part of the show on Alzheimer's and get into why Alzheimer's is lagging in terms of being understood and treated. It really kind of represents a bifurcation point where we're starting to see how in order to deal with Alzheimer's, we're going to have to move out of 20th century medical science and move into 21st century medical science. So what's different is that according to the 20th century medical model, if you want to do a clinical trial, you can only change one factor. You can test one drug or one food substance against one part of the condition. But Alzheimer's is complex, and it's treated with many things. And so the new systems biology is really where we're going more in the 21st century, where now we understand that there are a lot of, especially in chronic diseases, a lot of reasons why they appear, and many things are required to treat and heal them. And so the 21st century is using advanced computer technology to be able to calculate all of these different food substances, drugs, systems in the body, along with genetics, to be able to get massive amounts of information according to each person. So it's individualized, personalized medicine because we're all different. And so probably one of the exciting things about something like Alzheimer's is that that kind of work is now being done with some really good results. So, dementia. I remember when I was growing up, my great-grandmother lived with us. She was a full-blood Choctaw medicine woman, and she didn't talk much. And everybody just said, oh, that's because she has senile dementia. Well, knowing what I know now, I don't believe she had that. She just didn't have much to say in our environment. But as I was growing up, and tell me if this is the case for you, Deerwomon, older people, when they seem to get a little bit goofy, everyone just kind of smiled and said, oh yeah, they're getting senile. You're going to get senile when you get old, and that's just part of getting old.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm probably not a good sample for you because I had a pretty goofy family. You know, so and we had some mental illness on my father's side, and his older sister was part of the family, and so there was an embrace of that kind of awkward, behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was hard to tell in my family if somebody was senile or goofy. So sorry, I can't be your best candidate for that one.
Well, that's
but I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so with Alzheimer's, for instance, that was discovered back in 1906 by Dr. Alzheimer, and he had two cases. He diagnosed it after death when he autopsied the bodies and looked at the brain and saw these unusual, what are called plaques and tangles. And so he was the first person to spot it, and unfortunately he died before he had more cases. Well, I don't know, I shouldn't say before he had more cases. Unfortunately, he died soon after his second case. So all of that information just sat on the shelf. And so in medicine, it was called senile dementia until way up into the 1980s. It wasn't until like 1983 that they started to recognize Alzheimer's as something different. And they started dropping this word senile dementia. So it's not called that anymore. And we're starting to understand that there are these different forms of dementia. So looking at the database, now this is going to be able to help you if you are concerned that you might be starting to show signs of it, or a loved one is, the first thing we often think of is, oh dear, it might be Alzheimer's.
I have a question, Dakota. Then are we differentiating senility from Alzheimer?
We don't even use that.
We don't use it, so senility just kind of...
That went bye-bye.
And everything, now senility is integrated or in this category now?
Well, it's, with Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's makes up about 60% of dementia. most cases are Alzheimer's. However, we also know there are other forms of dementia. So somebody who's older could have something else that's not Alzheimer's, but it is a dementia. And of course, younger people can have it too. So what we're going to do is go through some of these different forms of it and just talk a little bit about them, and then we'll get into Alzheimer's and what it seems to be, and what kind of treatments are out there for everything from mild to advanced Alzheimer's. And if you'll look over on the left, I attached those because there's studies that show that drugs like Benadryl, if taken a lot, can result in dementia. So that's why that's there. And it's that color because it can be toxic, and you have to be really careful. So anything that is that dark gray color is something that's toxic. And it doesn't mean it's never used. There are times when you do need to use what we call a heroic toxic medicine to kickstart something in the body or to stop something that's emergency. But Benadryl, if you're using a lot of Benadryl, just know that it can cause dementia. And if you wanted to learn more about that, you could click on Benadryl and read about those studies.
And we're talking about Benadryl, which was the typical prescription for allergies.
Yes.
And stings and...
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, it's okay to use occasionally, you know, but if you're someone that's using it a lot, there are herbal alternatives that are safe, that do not cause dementia, and I would suggest switching to those. Statin drugs, there's a good correlation with the use of statin drugs and dementia, among other things.
What is a statin drug?
Okay, let's click on it.
Okay.
Okay, so here is an example. I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail, but niacin being there simply means that niacin is something that can offset some of the negative effects of statin drugs. There's a whole section here on how it can be involved in pancreatitis, which is an inflammation of the pancreas. But if you want to look at specific statin drugs, here are some of the more common ones. Gradually I'll add more to this category, but these are pretty common. Lipitor, pravastatin, and they're prescribed primarily for high cholesterol.
So does the word statin have a relationship to cholesterol? Is that?
No, not really.
No.
Now, if you wanted to learn more, I just lifted up the information panel.
Yes.
Under statin drugs.
Oh, okay, there we are.
And so here, these are studies. Now, in the upper portion, if you click on any of these, like are there alternative statins from WebMD, it's going to open up in another window. There's a video, more caution needed with statin drugs. If you click on that, it'll open a window a tab for a video.
Right.
Down here, though, when you start getting down into this lower section of the screen, if I were to click on one of these, it would take me out of the database. So what you do is right-click and then tell it to open in another tab, and that way you stay in the database.
Oh, that's good.
So these are just some of the studies. Now, this is something I spend a lot of time in, is pouring through the literature. And when I find a relevant study that's not in here, I'll put it in. So this grows, this whole section.
Okay, and this is a good time to remind our viewers that if this happens to be an area that you have studied or did some extensive research with, or see that you have some article or documents or links, you can contribute them to this database. Just contact Dakota, okay, and submit the link, and she'll add it to the database.
Yes. This is representative well, let me just say this, my intention and goal is for this database to be representative of the best minds, the best research in holistic medicine in general, you know, because that's what herbal medicine is. That herbal medicine has been our traditional medicine for thousands of years.
And before you go back to code, I want you to demonstrate the breadcrumbs when we go back to Alzheimer's.
Down here, I see where I've just been, and so I can return by just clicking on this dementia link here.
Right.
So warfarin is another drug that can result in dementia, and of course that's a blood thinner. The Coumadin blood thinners can do this. We have herbs that will take care of if you need to thin your blood. We have herbs that do the job without side effects, and this is another drug. Delirium I've attached because it's an unusual word. You might wonder, well, when you hear about delirium, especially in literature, how is that associated with dementia? Is it the same or different? This is going to be a video that explains that. Now down here, this color coding here, this intranasal light therapy, this is a proposed treatment. This is a definition, so it's light blue, and up here you see it's in the therapeutics glossary, which is another way to find information. So this is a description of this type of light therapy where colored light can be used to increase cellular energy and actually help to restore damaged cells. So you could read about this modality. It's non-invasive, very safe. Of course, finding somebody who does it is sometimes an issue, but that's just one option that you could use. And again, these are all general under the heading dementia, so it's not specific to any particular type of dementia. These are just, in general, these are going to help with different forms. I'm not going to go yet into like ginkgo and these different plant phytochemicals. First, I want to kind of just take you through some of the forms of dementia. So we've got something called Lewy body dementia. What that is there's a type of damage that can be done to certain cells in the brain that causes them to accumulate some things that don't belong there. They're called Lewy bodies. And when Lewy bodies happen or occur in the motor cortex, what we say is that somebody has Parkinson's disease. When Lewy bodies accumulate in the frontal cortex, that's the other place they tend to build up, then we say they have this Lewy body dementia. And it turns out that Parkinson's tends to, over time, just merge with this Lewy body dementia. In other words, one of the consequences of Parkinson's on down the road can be development of Lewy body dementia. Now, people who have this kind of dementia, because of where it is in the brain, you're not going to see so much memory loss. It's going to be more, there may be something with the motor abilities, but it's more going to be analytical problems, decision-making problems. It's in the executive part of the brain, and so they're just not going to be able to really figure things out real well. Their memory may be great, but you notice that they can't analyze very well anymore.
So would they, are they in a state of confusion, or are they aware they can't recall the facts?
Well, you know, no, they're not in a state of confusion so much, unless they used to be, have a self-image of being someone who had a strong analytical ability, and suddenly they can't do that anymore. They may not even recognize it unless someone points it out to them. So down here, to learn about Lewy body dementia, we have a bunch of really good videos that you could watch, as well as signs, symptoms, all that sort of thing. And as far as treating this, I haven't added a lot in the treatment section. I think what I'll do with this one is connect it up with Parkinson's, because there's a lot in here on how to treat Parkinson's disease naturally, and the same types of things probably be helpful for this. So let's go back to dementia now. And we're going to look at, let's see. There's something called frontotemporal dementia. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one, but that's kind of similar to Alzheimer's, but the plaques, again, are more in the frontal part of the brain. So somebody with this kind of dementia, in a similar way to Lewy body, is going to have difficulties with the executive functions, making decisions, analyzing things. Memory loss doesn't come until much later with people that have this. And this could be treated in a similar way to Alzheimer's.
And what part of the brain is the memory identified with?
Well, it's spread throughout the brain, but it's associated most strongly with the hypothalamus.
Okay, so that's behind, right?
That's kind of in the middle.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. And so Alzheimer's tends to appear and grow mostly in the hypothalamus. And when we get into diagnosis, they have found that it may even before that start in the olfactory area of the brain, and that leads to an at-home treatment that we need to get to during this show, because it's pretty cool.
So, Dakota, does dementia start, if it starts in the hypothalamus, which is kind of the center of the brain, is it something that grows out from the center? Does it have any kind of mapping?
Not really. Well, it's not like all Alzheimer's brains look the same exactly, but they do in the sense that large gaps and holes are formed and the brain shrinks. So, and we'll get into that some when we get into Alzheimer's. Now, if you want just an overview of dementia in general, come to this dementia overview. There's a nice little video here that actually it's kind of long, but but it takes you through it at risk of being forgotten. Now, there's another kind of dementia called vascular dementia, and this is what happens to people when they have a stroke, including lots of those little tiny strokes that go unnoticed. And what happens here, and it's not just strokes, but any problem with blood to the brain can cause a state of oxygen starvation and death of cells. So here, this, depending on where it occurs in the brain, there can be signs of, it's just not working wherever it happens. So this one is pretty broad, but the good news is that it is limited to that area. It doesn't grow and become worse. It's like, and it's usually not noticed for about 3 months. So let's say somebody has a stroke that destroys some area of the brain. They may be able to still function for a while because the brain, that part may not be totally dead yet. But within 3 months, there's something noticeable that they're not doing anymore. For example, sometimes people lose speech. That's not uncommon. So that part of the brain was affected.
So here it's recommending scalp acupuncture. Interestingly enough, that's where we're broadcasting from. It's an acupuncture community center. So that would be, now when we use acupuncture, it's stimulating the neural impulses, actually, right? The energy that goes through the meridians. So this would be almost like an electrical charge that stimulates, perhaps wakes it up.
You know, as far as how acupuncture works, it does affect the electromagnetic part of the body, but there are apparently other energy systems in the body that are at a more fundamental level. There you're getting into very subtle, I think of it as like the quantum realms of what is behind our physical structure, and that's, you know, and I also think that's kind of a futuristic form of medicine when we start to be able to treat things at that level. So this isn't actually a scalp acupuncture. Auricular means ear. It's the type of acupuncture that's done in the ear. So again, here's information you can use if you're concerned about it. And again, if you do have something like this going on or with a friend, and you go through this information, come back to it from time to time because I add. And what I'm going to be doing in this show, once we kind of get through more of these basics, is having a section of the show where I let everybody know what the new material is so that you can go, okay, a whole lot has just been added to vascular dementia, everybody.
Okay, and a practical, before you leave this page, a practical application of utilizing the Herbal Database is I see over to the side, to the right side, there's a bar. And if you'll just show how that scrolls so it can show more of what's on the page.
Now, just to explain what is going on this side.
Yes, that's what I want.
All of this stuff, if you look at the lines, it tells you what it's related to. So this is all stuff that's related to that dementia. So when we click back on dementia, all of that is going to drop back down underneath.
Okay. So when you were scrolling, we were actually seeing all the other components there.
Yes.
Okay.
You were looking at this stuff.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And you have also a bar down below.
Yes. Bars can appear anywhere, depending on how much there is to look at.
Okay.
And so keep an eye out for those. So these are, again, some of the substances that are helpful for pretty much all forms of dementia. But I want to get into Alzheimer's. You can go to the database and look these things up yourself and read all of that. And what I would suggest, those of you who are already in the database, it might be good for you to have it open when we're doing the show, so that you could run over and kind of look at things yourself, or definitely after the show, go in and look at this. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, just, you know, take a moment to say that this Herbal Database is something you can register for. And it's $15 per month on an ongoing basis. And I just want our viewers to know this is the way you can contribute to the Herbal Knowledge Keeper show. This is how you can support us and support the ongoing entries that Dakota has been doing for over 10 years. That's the way that you can make a donation. And as Dakota said, this is going to be something we do every other week on this program. You could be opening your database and asking questions and reflecting as it's being demonstrated.
Right. And also, if there's a particular topic that you want to have covered on the show, let us know. That's kind of how this one came about, was because of requests. So now we're going to just zero in on Alzheimer's. We'll take a look at the landscape here, and then I'm going to get into some of the nitty-gritty. So what you're looking at here, at the top, the upper level, it's a neurological disorder. It's being called diabetes type 3, and we'll get into that. It's a form of dementia. And over here are other elements that are associated with it. The light blue will be just some basic information. We'll talk about what amyloid beta is, the different proteins, different drugs that are used for it, and different genetics, different genes. We'll talk quite a bit. This gene is really pretty interesting, the story of that. So this toxoplasmic gondii is there because that is one of the things that has been associated, not necessarily, I'm not sure it's proven yet, but it's been associated with possibly forming Alzheimer's. And metabolic factors, this one I think is really important for everybody. This is a video, and I'm going to talk about this guy quite a bit in this show, Bredesen, who I think represents where the research and treatment of Alzheimer's is going in 21st century medicine. Let me go back here, because he's recognizing that metabolic factors are key. And in herbalism, that's how we think of things anyway. It's synergistic and multifactorial. There are many, many players. So then Alzheimer's care facilities. So that's a concern. There are people who have advanced Alzheimer's, and you can't take care of them at home anymore. And what do? So there's some really innovative, beautiful solutions that have recently cropped up. And here are a few of them. There's Dementia Village. I'm going to go ahead and open these. Dementia Village in the Netherlands, which is a small community that's an actual village. They're trying to help people who have this live a happy, normal feeling life. And what remains is the precious life we used and still want to live. No more, no less. That's the thinking behind this little village. So all the doors open, the people are free to come and go. They have little cafes, their homes, libraries, gyms. They can go wherever they want. The only thing is that it's blocked off from outside the village, so they aren't going to get hurt and get lost. And so their aim is to give quality of life. And so some of these new approaches to care are doing that. And there's a beautiful one in Thailand, which is known for medical tourism, in Chiang Mai. There are at least two of them that I know of that are really, really nice. There was a 4-star retreat that completely remodeled itself to take care of Alzheimer's. And there's another one that's very small in Chiang Mai. They only have 12 people, no gates or anything, but what happens is they have their own caretaker that stays with them 24 hours a day. And wherever they go, whatever they're doing, their loving caretaker is with them. So if they get up in the middle of the night, there's somebody there. And so it's a family atmosphere. So you can come here and look at some of these, and as I find more of them, I'll put them in. Oh, the other thing about it that's important. This long-term care is very expensive. And in the Netherlands, the government is subsidizing that dementia village. They have about, I think, 120 people there. It's never more than $3,600 a month. It's actually $12,000 that the government pays most of it. In Thailand, and these facilities are absolutely gorgeous. The care is exquisite. They are costing about $3,600 a month. Now, to me, that's still pretty hefty. But if you have the money and you want to do something for a loved one that you feel good about, that's certainly an option. And I hope that more of that kind of thinking develops even in this country too. so that these people have the kind of care that they need.
Well, that's that's a return to our tribal familial nature.
Yeah.
Is that we encompass all of the individuals as they are, and then we create, what I'm hearing here is we create safe and nurturing environments so those individuals can exist. And, it makes me think about how, our shamans are identified, they're the ones that are kind of what we all call ourselves as black sheep in a tribe. They act differently. They have visions. They have dreams. And we learn how to accommodate them and their needs. Right. And now, from my understanding, I know I'm going off on a little lake here, but even in our school systems, we're now having more special needs students than we have what you call normal. And basically, this is what we're talking about. We are lacking a special need culture, recognizing all our special needs and creating that safe environment for us to be who we are.
Yeah, so it's really, I wish there were, and maybe there will be more of them. Actually, I wish we didn't need them at all, but until we learn how to deal with this at its earlier stages, that kind of, that population is growing. So Borrelia-induced Alzheimer's, and that's, Borrelia is basically your Lyme disease. That's a genus of spirochete, which is a kind of a spiral-shaped bacteria that causes not only, Borrelia is associated with Lyme. Let me just show you here. You see here it says the genus Borrelia. I'm going to click on that because we are going to look a little bit at this family of spirochetes. This is the family of spirochetes here, and the genus is Borrelia, and another genus of spirochete is, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, I think it's Treponema. And this species causes syphilis. Now, if you remember your history books, one of the late-stage symptoms of syphilis was dementia. And the brain develops these plaques that look very much like the amyloid plaques of Alzheimer's. It was caused by a spirochete. And so this association is, okay, I'm opening up syphilis, and these are some of the things that help treat that. But I'm going to go back to, okay, now, because I've enlarged it, my breadcrumb trail is too small. So I'm going to go back to Alzheimer's. Okay. And go back to this. Now, this is really interesting because there was research done starting in the 1980s that found Borrelia in the brains of people who died from Alzheimer's. And these videos are pretty convincing. I recommend this one, Biofilms Are Alive in Alzheimer's Disease Plaques, Alzheimer Borreliosis Lecture, and it shows the research using such things as DNA probes that only pick up the DNA from a specific microbe. And in most of the brains that were of people who had died and the brains had been frozen and preserved, they found this Borrelia. And so this is something I think worth thinking about. However, the good news is, and I'm not sure where I stand on this, I think it could cause Alzheimer's because we see the spirochete from from syphilis went into the brain. So it stands to reason that the spirochete that causes Lyme, and there are several Borrelia species, could do the same thing. So, however, there is some good news, and down here you see it says study disproves the link between Lyme and Alzheimer's. Basically what that did was it correlated the states that had high levels of Lyme disease with how much Alzheimer's showed up there. So they found 13 states that had the highest levels of Lyme disease, and they also had the lowest levels of Alzheimer's. And so from that, they're saying that there's not a clear association between Lyme and Alzheimer's. So I don't think it's proof that it can't happen, but it's comforting to know that if it does happen, it's not happening all the time. So what is Alzheimer's, right? What is Alzheimer's?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is spirochete?
Okay. Well, a spirochete is a type of bacteria that the bacteria are named after what kind of shape they're in. And so spirochetes are a corkscrew shape. Think of it, it almost looks like a corkscrew kind of little worm. It's not a worm, but that's kind of what it looks like. And it can change its shape. So it can break up. One of the ways that it reproduces is, it's like if you can picture the pearls on a string, and you break the string, you have all these little pearls. That is a granule form that can enter a cell and grow new spirochetes. And it can also make a cyst that it can just hang out. So when I talk about spirochetes, that's like a family that produces these the genus of Borrelia, and the genus of this other one that I can't pronounce, that makes the syphilis. And there are others too. So basically that's just describing a certain family. Okay, so let me see, where did that one go? Some people might be aware of the genetic, they're worried about the genes in Alzheimer's. And that's a pretty interesting story. This is what seems to be the bad guy. And then if you really want to learn about it, you could watch this video. And this is about dietary management of the ApoE4. But the story of ApoE is, according to evolutionary biology, it was the ApoE4 gene that was the new kid on the block that changed us, allowed us to change from being simians in the trees to humans walking on the ground. It gave us certain abilities to function in a much rougher world where we needed to be able to fight with each other or dangerous animals that we might be eating or whatever, because it allows for rapid wound healing. It's pro-inflammatory, and interestingly, it's anti-longevity. So it favored the young and took out the old, so that there was always a kind of a younger population around. And ApoE4 is the oldest of these ApoEs. There's also ApoE3, 2, and I think a 1. They came more recently. But this ApoE is also associated with Alzheimer's. Part of it is because it stimulates production of, one of the many things it does is it stimulates production of something called amyloid beta, and it drives the cells towards, the nerve cells towards cell death in some complicated ways. And with ApoE4, one of the good things about it is that it enables people to do without a lot of food. So, you know, if you can picture a lifestyle where food, maybe you had it sometimes you did okay if you had this gene. However, if you had this gene and you ate too much, it caused you to have things like too much high cholesterol, heart disease, and other degenerative conditions. So when people do their gene testing with things like 23andMe, one of the things they want to know is, do I have this gene? And if you do, you're going to either have one or two of them. So if you have one of them, it does increase the odds of, or the risk factor in developing Alzheimer's. If you have two of them, it increases the risk by about 20 times. And so if, and it could be kind of good to know if you have that, because there are things you can do, as for example, this lecture explains. And it may be that if you have this ApoE4, two of them, one of the things you can do is intermittent fasting. It would be more important for you to do intermittent fasting if you have two of those genes. So let's see, I'm looking at the time. We're still good. Yes, we're good. I'm going to go to, all right, I think I'm just going to make some recommendations here, because we probably don't have time to get into everything, but I just want to say that this is important, this video, and it talks about a new strategy for understanding what Alzheimer's is. It's not a disease. A lot of people are in the field are saying we're going to discover that there's several forms of Alzheimer's. And here, these researchers, this is a famous, internationally known neuroscientist, has identified 3 different forms. 2 of them are not diseases at all. It's a metabolic disorder that's causing a down-regulation or a downsizing of the neural network in the brain. So one example he gives of what's happening, he says that we need all of these inputs, metabolic inputs, to maintain the healthy brain. He's found 36 of them. And he likens it to a company that has 10,000 employees, and the company's in the red, so they can't take on any more new employees. There's a protein that that forms amyloid beta. I don't know if you know what that is, but amyloid beta is one of the things that makes these plaques that they're concerned about and they're trying to get rid of. Anyway, this protein is like the CFO of the company. And what it does when it sees it doesn't have the resources to maintain or to bring in new people, it just wants to be able to keep what it has. It sends out a memo to downsize. So this is beautifully explained here about how some of what's going on, even with the amyloid plaques, is really just memos going out not to make any more neural networks, or neurons rather, and eventually that signal is amplified to start getting rid of some of the ones that they already have. So the goal to get rid of the amyloid is really kind of, well, it's not working. The goal needs to be to look at what is it that the brain needs to have all of the resources that it needs to function. And here they're doing metabolic profiling for each individual, for example, comparing copper to zinc ratios, how much magnesium is actually in your red blood cells. All of that profiling is done. And from that, they're able to determine what kind of inputs are missing that's going to cause the brain to start downsizing and forming these, what are signaling molecules, telling the brain to stop making new memories and eventually shrink. So what's beautiful about this is that it's reaching into territory we herbalists know very, very well. We know that and a lot of the research has shown some of these inputs are things as simple as sleep. We have to have a certain amount of sleep. If you don't, that's something that can drive the formation of these plaques and signaling molecules of Alzheimer's. We need to have certain flavonoids. Probably one of the most important things are the kind of fats that we're taking in. We need these building blocks. So the brain, for example, all the cells in the brain have a membrane that's made up of an important fatty acid called DHA. And so we need to have a supply of DHA. And so there are nutritional plans that kind of fit with these profiles that help us make sure we're getting the building blocks. Some other things are exercise. They have discovered that there are many things that cause Alzheimer's, so it gets confusing sometimes. Like one area of the science will say, well, it's caused by heavy metals and mercury. Another will say, no, it's caused by reactive oxygen species. Well, it turns out it's all of them. And when they kind of can add up to reach a threshold where all of a sudden everything tips over and the brain says, okay, we've got to downsize now. We cannot maintain what we have. So that's just real basic. But this is a fascinating video here. But I want to go now to some of the things that help, some of the substances that help, and it's encouraging to look at these things. These are from studies. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, herbs and substances that help. Now, really, this is for prevention and for early mild Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. By the way, the program that it has developed out of what I was just talking about is called MEND, and they have successfully reversed early Alzheimer's, okay? And based on MRI scans showing that the brain's been restored.
You've mentioned plaque often.
Yes.
And now we're going to look at substances that help. Are we really talking about preventing plaque and maybe
And clearing it out? Yeah.
and exactly what is plaque?
Okay, so there's this, we're talking about a lot of proteins that act as signaling molecules in the brain that are involved in, like the cells are actually making decisions all of the time about what's going on and what they need to do. And so what happens when it's determined that we don't have, that the brain cells aren't getting, and the neurons are not getting what they need to sustain themselves, then they start sending out this memo to downsize, to either pull back on not make any more neural connections, or even pull back on the ones they've made. So there's a protein called amyloid beta that is one of these memos. There's 4 memos that go out saying, let's downsize. Amyloid beta is just one of them. And if you can picture, you know what origami looks like, beautiful folded paper. Proteins, part of their function is in the way they're folded. If you want to think of a sacred geometry, it's the way they're folded that makes them do things. So amyloid beta in its normal form, because it does some things that are good for us, it's antimicrobial for one thing, is folded in this beautiful origami, and where it's held together there's some like little sticky flaps. But when it needs to signal to downsize, it changes the way it's folded, and the sticky flaps go on the outside. And so it starts sticking to other amyloid, and it starts building up. Now, for a long time, it was thought that this was just a misfolding, a mistake, like a, crazy old body just It's going wonkers, doesn't know what it's doing. But actually it turns out that this misfolding is intentional to amplify the signal that amyloid beta is trying to give out to downsize. So it's amplifying that signal by what we're saying, misfolding, and that's what prions do, and then sticking to other amyloids. And now you have this great big fat signal that's yelling downsize, downsize. So what, in all of the Alzheimer's research for drugs, one of the things they're looking at is how do we get rid of this amyloid beta, because it forms this big plaque that they're not sure if it's the cause of Alzheimer's or a byproduct of something else. Well, it turns out that what's needed, you could get rid of that plaque, and so far that has not been successful because you haven't done anything about the reason why it's being formed in the first place. It's signaling saying we need to downsize, and that's because there's this metabolic imbalance where what's needed to sustain this over a quadrillion neural connections in the brain. To sustain that, we've got to have certain things. So what you have to do is back up and go, okay, what's missing? It's called like a trophism. What signals is the brain missing that we can restore so it doesn't need to tell the brain to downsize? So these things look like I wanted to show you an animation. They look like fuzzy balls. And there's something else that happens that's part of the pathology in Alzheimer's that's called tangles. And what that is it's called a phosphorylated tau, so TAU, which is another natural, normal component that kind of holds together, well, it helps with transmission of signals. And what it does is it will, probably for a similar reason, it comes unglued from where it's supposed to be and starts stacking up to and forming what just basically looks like hairy tangles. And so all of the effort so far has been focused on the amyloid plaque and the tangles and how do we get rid of those things. But they're signaling things saying, hey, we're not getting what we need. Right. So you go back and see, the part of the problem has been, and this is why the 21st century medicine is coming to the rescue, it's so complex to be able to figure out what isn't getting into the brain that it needs and what's there it needs to get rid of. It's so complex that it's beyond it. But the technology now is becoming so advanced, especially in computation, that they're able to take all of these different factors and put them together along with a person's gene sequence and everything, and be able to determine, this, and here's some imbalances, and by correcting these imbalances, many of them, a person can be restored back, in fact, even better than they were before. So, are you ready to look at some things that help? And these are, this is from studies where, again, in clinical studies or most, all of these studies, they only look at one thing. It's not like what we need is to have many, many, many together. So you've probably heard about coconut oil for Alzheimer's. Many people have latched onto that, and that can help. But here's the thing: since there are 36 inputs, let's say coconut oil takes care of one of them. If you imagine a roof with 36 holes in it, plugging up one hole is a little bit helpful, but it's not going to stop the water damage. So you have to plug up all the holes. That's the thing about it. However, coconut oil can be helpful for plugging up some holes. So here's, if you go to coconut oil, you're going to find out that it does many, 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 many things besides help with Alzheimer's. And one of the ways I like to work with this is most people have more than one thing they're having to deal with. So if we can find abdominal fat, let's not go there right now. If they can find a few substances that help with a variety of their conditions, that's really the best. So vitamin E has to be, and that's been studied, but it has to be all 6-tocopherol. Most vitamin E that's sold is just going to have something like alpha tocopherol. It has to be the whole E complex, and you can get that from nuts, fresh nuts like walnuts. Let's see, let me just kind of go to gingerol. That's from ginger. These are like alpha-lipoic acid. That's a real good one for Alzheimer's and dementia in general, and it helps to clean out the garbage from a lot of the cells, and among other things. And that comes from potatoes. And you can buy alpha-lipoic acid as a supplement, or you can drink the water that you're cooking your russet potatoes in, and that's rich in alpha-lipoic acid. So it's always good to find ways to kind of save your money, because some of these things are expensive. All right, so here are some others that have been tested against Alzheimer's. And again, I add to this, but let me just lift this screen up and see what's down here. Okay, just a few things here. Cranberry extract. Some of these things are enjoyable. Mango. Black peppercorn is very interesting. Some of the drugs, one of the things that happens in Alzheimer's is there's a loss of acetylcholine, which is something that's used for nerve signaling communication. And so some of the drugs they're developing are based on preserving acetylcholine in the brain. Well, black peppercorn does that, and you can make an extract with it. So here's an example of a great deal of information about black peppercorn, something I'm pretty excited about. That's your black pepper. You can make a tincture with it. It's antispasmodic, and here's a whole bunch of studies. You could look at that. And I'll go along here to show age-related vision loss, Alzheimer's, anti-obesity, and so on, depression. So if you were depressed and thought you had Alzheimer's, which could go together, black peppercorn might be for you. Okay, so let's go back down here. Boswellia, that's frankincense, cinnamon bark, coconut water, magnolia extract, that's what this is. Hei Shao Wu, sometimes mistakenly called Fotis, that's a longevity tonic from China. Fermented papaya, cranberry extract, cannabis. This is a Chinese herb, and even rosemary leaf. And rosemary is amazing. You know, we kind of take it for granted, but get into this, look at rosemary and see what all it does. And then sage. And there are studies that show that sage preserves memory, but not only that, it can help stave off Alzheimer's. And here we're talking about ordinary garden sage, but especially the Spanish sage seems to be a little bit more effective. But here, you know, some studies to show you what it can do. I want to mention also this business about Alzheimer's being associated with as a type 3 diabetes. One of the things that happens, and amyloid beta will do this, among other things, is it kind of turns off the insulin receptors. So the brain needs insulin, and the synapses use it, and so people can develop insulin resistance, and that interferes with the brain's ability to use glucose, and the brain is the biggest user of glucose. So in pretty much every case of Alzheimer's, in this one branch of research where they looked at that, there was 100% insulin resistance. So sage is one of the things that can help with that. Okay, so that was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that was wonderful. That's usual, Dakota. And a reminder to our listeners and viewers that after you've digested the information that's been shared here, if you have questions at any given time, even if you see this archive video a year from today, contact Dakota and send your inquiries, your questions, because that's what helps this database to expand. And if that information is not there, it will be inputted. So don't hesitate to have communication with us about that. So the Herbal Database is available. It's through Dakota's website, the Ozark Herbal Academy.
No.
I'm sorry, I get that
It's
backwards.
not, that's the school's website. The database I said.
Oh, I was going to send them through there.
Yeah, it's not the best place to go for that.
Okay.
The school is ozarkherbalacademy.org. The database itself, I set it up to take the branding off of it, basically, so that other schools would be comfortable using it, you know. And so the address for that is ultimateherbaldatabase.online.
And that link will always be included in these archive videos. And you'll always find that link at our website pages via Get Lit at consciousconsumernetwork.tv. So, and then Dakota also has a Facebook page. But we're easy. You'll find us. We're trying to get more and more out there. So the way you can assist us, like I said earlier, is registering for this database is the way that you can contribute and donate. If you're finding value in our program, that ongoing registering is really what will help us. So please share this, get this information out to as many people as you know, and let us all share in this wealth of knowledge and wisdom. So this part of the show, Granny Woman, Dakota Granny Woman is actually quite the storyteller. And it's really another beautiful aspect of what she has to share. And I'm sure many of you sitting here are going, who is this woman? And how did she create this? And I mean, you can see that this is an extensive scientific, medical, herbal, wise, intelligent creation. And Dakota has many stories, but there's one in particular that I'm going to prompt her to tell. And you may have heard it, but you know, sometimes stories take a new twist in the moment that it's told. But, and the reason I'm going after this particular story is that there was a conversation that Dakota and I both were involved in yesterday evening. And it happened to touch into the realms of our path, how each of us have grown in understanding who we are, how we've explored our spiritual nature, how we've come to the places that we've come to in this here and now. And that's where I want to include that in this story. And one of the things that Dakota had shared last night was that her experience of living in the wild for 10 years and listening very closely to the earth and the animals and the plants is what brought her to this shared place of knowing and having clarity about who she is now. And I felt very resonant with what Dakota, what you shared, of who we are now. That after so much experience of accumulating external information, there's a point at which we turn inward. And we're no longer, I think as you put it last night, Dakota, we're no longer seekers. We then become finders. And so let's begin with that point in your life, Dakota, where you decided, I'm going to the wild. I'm going to the wilderness because it was calling.
Okay, well, I wasn't ready for this. This is one of Deerwomon's spontaneous things. And that story right there is pretty long, so I'm not going to tell all of it right now, okay?
Okay.
So I went in to live in a 15,000-acre federal wilderness preserve that's tucked inside the Ozark National Forest. And I was, most of the time there, I was the only person, the only human, and there were a number of reasons I went, but one of them was I wanted to find out if the universe was friendly, and I wanted to find out if it was really true that a woman with little experience of actually living the primitive lifestyle in the wilderness could go to a wilderness and do that and survive on her own. And I wanted to make the connection with nature to find out what it means to be human in the deep embrace of nature at her wildest. And I wanted to learn about plants firsthand. Would they teach me? So it's a long story that I'm not going to get into too much about how I got logged into nature's broadband, but Matthew Wood calls it frog medicine, which is, he explains as empathy for all living things. And so I would lay awake at night learning how to sing with all of the night creatures in such a way as to fit in. And through that process, I learned who the conductor was of that orchestra and began to sing that song and live that song. So I brought with me, I hiked in about 600 books, at least, I'm not exaggerating, and I had big plans on what I was going to do in the wilderness with my studies and my writing and my practice and what kind of meditation I was going to do. I had it all kind of planned out. And I did for the first few years do a lot of that. I loved the intellect, and I read a lot and was really into Buddhist logic and the whole 9 yards. And however, as this was going on, I was deepening my connection with what I just call the presence now. Initially, that was, I thought of it as part of my spiritual journey. And then the presence communicated to me fairly early on that no, if you want to survive in the wilderness alone, you're going to have to submit yourself to the presence all the time. You're going to have to surrender to the presence all the time. When I talk about the presence, what I'm describing is there's an intelligence in nature that's been called nature's broadband that keeps everything going, makes everything communicate between all the species, organizes and manages the ecosystem. And that's kind of what I wanted to see, what it was like to be human in that. So once you make that connection, then in order to keep it, you have to be ready to do what it wants you to do. And sometimes it's pretty crazy, but it's always right. And I had a number of experiences where I was going to be in danger when the presence came through and alerted me to the problem. You may have heard stories about people in the wilderness who know when somebody's coming. They have no communication devices. Somehow when the travelers from hundreds of miles away start to appear over the hill, the whole tribe is there waiting for them, and they're standing there. How did you know? There are no cell phones, there's no nothing. But it was like that. The presence is communicating these kinds of things to those who listen, and you just kind of have to make changes to have your life in sync with it. So when I realized that to survive, I was going to have to do this. Of course, I knew that I had no choice. I wanted to survive. I like survival a lot. And so I did that. And after a number of years, well, 10 years, I saw how it had changed me. And one of the ways that it had changed me was that all of my concepts about everything, really, about myself, about my spiritual path, about what was important, everything was, and all the books that I brought with me, all my learning, it all was something that I discovered I had placed in this box and set to the side because I didn't need it. I loved it all, but it wasn't useful to me anymore. And so it's, at this point, it's really about staying tuned into the presence and going wherever I'm called, to be there on call at any moment, to do any kind of crazy thing that it tells me to. I will share one crazy thing just to give you an idea of what's required if you're going to have this kind of lifestyle. So I had a 1 acre garden that I was tending, aside from foraging for it. It was a lot of work. In order to get out of this wilderness, I had to climb a mountain that was very steep, and it could take me anywhere from 3 to 5 hours to get to the top of it. And I didn't like doing it very much because there wasn't really any trail. It was pretty risky. So I'm down in the garden and I'm working away, and all of a sudden, the presence gives me this download that says, stop what you're doing and run up that mountain as fast as you can. And I went, no, I have so much work to do. Can't I just finish this part? And it came through again. Hurry, drop that, run up the mountain. And of course I had to cross on foot a very treacherous creek to even get to the mountain. So I go, okay, I'm doing it. I don't know why. I have no clue, and I don't want to do it. But the presence said, run up the mountain. So I'm running up the mountain as fast as I can, and it's telling me go faster. And I'm starting to kind of giggle to myself, thinking, oh my God, I'm so glad I live alone. Because I could never explain this to anybody. And then I thought, they have that saying that says, she's been in the woods too long. They'll take you away to the funny farm. And so I am kind of laughing at this point, and then it says, no, you're not going fast enough. So I don't go fast up that mountain, but I'm running as fast as I can. And by the time I get to the top of the mountain, I see there's a road up there, and I see a car parked on the side of the road right where the path comes off the mountain. And there's a man standing outside of his car doing something. And I recognized him, and I'm amazed because it turns out that I had some very important information for this man. It was somebody that I knew. And I had some really pretty critical information that I had to share with him. And mind you, I didn't have a phone or any way to communicate with anybody on the outside. And he just happened to be there for that short time. So I ran up to him and gave him that life-changing information that he needed. And he got in, saying, that, and then he was gone. So somehow, this kind of thing that happened a lot, and somehow it was, when I thought about it, all right, so the presence is calculated. This guy lived in Fayetteville, about 2.5 hours away. It calculated when he was leaving Fayetteville. It knew that he would stop there. It knew just how long it took me to run up the mountain as fast as I can.
Right.
And based on all of that, gave me that signal that said it's time to go now.
That's such a beautiful story of intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the essence of infinite life, is that everything is intelligent.
Yeah.
The origins of everything, us included, which is why we're being asked to be kind and loving about our environment, our ecosystem, our bacteria. We are one and the same in divine intelligence. That's beautiful, Dakota. I love that story. I love both of those stories. And we are coming near to a closure here. I do want to share with you, Dakota, I checked over here in the chat room, and to go back to the discussion of Alzheimer and dementia, there's acknowledgement here that one of our chatter's moms has been on statin drugs now, and they're saying they're definitely going to push the herbal foods in her diet. And it looks like one of our chatters is one of your students online, and he is acknowledging you. And
Who is that?
that's Jared.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And and I just wanted our viewers and audience to know as well that, yes, we haven't spoken about that in this session, but Dakota also teaches online and goes very deeply into the studies, the herbal and medical studies. But I think we're going to encourage Dakota Granny Woman to tell her stories at the end of these sessions each time we come back on. And maybe we have just a few minutes here if you'd like to just give a brief explanation of the Ozark Academy.
Okay. The Ozark Herbal Academy also started in the wilderness because there was a primitive skill school that learned I was down there, and they would bring their students down 4 times a year for a weekend study. And so I wound up having students that asked me to keep teaching when I left the wilderness. And since a lot of them came from other states, they said, would you please do something online because the traveling is rough. So I decided to go ahead and do that. It's been challenging for me too because I live in the backwoods most of the time without good internet. So it's been a real challenge doing something online when I can't be online.
I have to go to that broadband.
Yes. But it is happening, and I keep changing my idea of what it looks like to teach online, teach this kind of material online. I took this year off from that to move everything I could into the database. So there actually are some Explore courses in the database now, and later on I'll show you those. But what I intend to do is go back and create a whole new approach to the online teaching using really short lessons, because I get really involved and have really long lessons. I'm going to cut it up into a little bit to make it easy for people. And I teach here in Eureka Springs, face-to-face classes. We're at Flora Roja right now, this great acupuncture clinic and apothecary. I teach here. I just got back from Moonflower in Texas. So anyway, I'm looking to talk with you. And Jerry, hi, it's been a long time since we've talked anyway. Get Lit, I think, was the last time. Mm-hmm. So I love you guys, and I'm so glad you're here. Please stay in touch, because I really want to know what's working for you. This is a community, putting our heads together kind of a deal where we really need to know what people are doing that's working and what's not working, so that we can make the best use of really thousands of years of herbal wisdom now blending beautifully with this advanced new system of biology that's recognizing a lot of what the ancients knew way back when, and giving it and really validating all of it in a beautiful way.
Well, I want to thank you again, Dakota. You're awesome, as usual, and it's an honor to co-host with you. And just to add, it's Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and the Conscious Consumer Network.tv is from the Netherlands. And we're very grateful to have this spot on the platform. And just to let you know, yes, Get Lit has embraced the Herbal Knowledge Keeper show. And every other week, Rebecca Hahn and myself come back on. And trust me, next Tuesday, Rebecca and I are going to kick off 2017. And we've just already told you the intention is going to be a blast. And you may recall, those of you who were with us last year, we were actually, I think it was New Year's Day, we actually had our show. And Rebecca and I kind of showed up as Buddha and Jesus, if you remember, and we came up with the Buddha Ford Clinic. Well, I think we're going to have a revisit. So please come join us next Tuesday for our 2017 kickoff. And I love all of you. I'm grateful that you spend the time with us. And thank you, Vicki and Nell, our co-producers.
Thank you.
You're doing an outstanding job. And anyone who's really appreciating this network that's bringing alternative news and media to you, absolutely make your contributions to CCN. And also, if you're appreciating our show, we can use contributions, either registering for the database, or just make contributions, and we appreciate you.
And just share the show, share the information. You know, everybody has in this, I just say that right now, everybody is going to either wind up with dementia or caring for somebody who has it. So this is really critical to get this information out.
Yeah, absolutely. So please, just keep sharing it. All right. Well, thanks again. Love you. See you next week.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire, the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.